You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And I want to start with your piece today, Jim, because I love the headline. Francois Legault is at an environmentalist conference in New York, and I love what you wrote. So you wrote, Francois Legault, world-class environmentalist, was not on my bingo card.
No, I don't think it was on anybody's. And he certainly wasn't on Greenpeace Canada's. But the fact is, he is the only Canadian premier who was invited to the grandly named Climate Ambition Summit, which apparently is, all government leaders are supposed to go to this big shindig and sort of thump their chest over what a great job they're doing. And like it or not, the United Nations is perceiving Quebec as a leader, even though, we can boast that, nearly 100% of our energy is renewable. All that said, this has been a fact of life for Quebecers for more than half a century. And by the way, have I mentioned we have about 85 bazillion rivers and lakes here that'll power our hydroelectric system, even though, the sort of asterisk at the bottom of all this is that we may be running out of that energy in a few years, and they're going to want to build more dams. So I'm not entirely sure the reviews on Premier Legault being a custodian of the environment is going to hold if they're going to start blowing stuff up to make dams. And don't forget, we're heading towards this energy crisis. Not insofar as, how much we can produce, but who gets what, because this government has made it clear they want to use energy as a magnet to draw investment to Quebec. And will that bill ultimately, for cheap energy, be handed to Quebecers who, in the meantime, are being told, you really should think about, turning on your dishwasher at night or drying your clothes at night because, you shouldn't be using energy during the rush hour. We haven't really felt it yet. And I don't think they're going to peep about this over the course of the winter until they find out how the winter is. But more and more, Legault's legacy may well hinge on how much investment he brings to Quebec. This seems to be his number one priority, the one thing he has stuck to. I mean, apart from convincing Quebecers that they're consistently under siege. But yeah, this is his big thing. So enjoy the kudos now. And it's also interesting, because this week, with the UN General Assembly is resuming, with the Prime Minister, the Premier of Quebec, and the Mayor of Montreal are all down in New York City. It's kind of crazy.
What's going on? So you have this environmental conference and another one. You're right. They're all three down there at the same time.
Yep.
What's the deal? Do you know?
Well, I hope they don't rely on, I hope the City of New York hasn't adopted Montreal's traffic control or construction control policies because they're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
But all that said, I think it's just a happy coincidence. But certainly, coming on the heels of Justin Trudeau's almost like Dallas finale blockbuster yesterday, all of a sudden here he is. He's going to New York. He's going to be at the United Nations, and later this week for that special episode, we have special guest star. Vladimir Zelensky, who's the head of Ukraine, perceived by many people on this planet to be a real hero. And it's kind of funny because I mentioned yesterday after Trudeau dropped this bombshell about the intelligence report saying India, the credible report saying India was involved in the murder of this Canadian Sikh leader in BC earlier this year. It was kind of interesting to wonder, I haven't heard nothing. I ain't heard except shock and appalled from the opposition. There has not been any kind of questioning. There's not been any kind of probing. And now, we know will be wall-to-wall photo ops with Trudeau and Zelensky over the course of this week. And I'm reminded of this movie that I saw a long time ago where there was a presidential election going on in the States. And it seems to me that even though, I'll paraphrase it, and even though Pierre Poilievre keeps saying, I want to be Prime Minister of Canada, I think the message Justin Trudeau is sending to Mr. Poilievre, and frankly anybody else, is I am the Prime Minister of Canada. So to a certain extent, a lot of the dark clouds that we're expecting to lower over over the Trudeau government have cleared for the moment. I don't know how many other shiny things Trudeau's got in his bag of tricks, but right now, he's doing what he does well: photo ops, international relations, inflation, not so much. We hit 4% last month. But you know what? No one's talking about that right now. And the bottom line is, for this government, that's all that matters.
Right. So when you say bag of tricks, that is what was going through my mind. And I'm like, am I too jaded in thinking that these are distraction tactics, dropping the news yesterday in Parliament on the first day when he would have
Natasha, you can never be too rich or too jaded. Okay?
But Jim, was this going to be a case, and we're going to find out later when we have Bob Fife on, was this a matter, again, like it was for the Chinese interference thing, where the government was, I guess, had their hand forced because this story was going to come out in the Globe?
You know what? I mean, obviously, Bob Fife's a big boy. He can speak for himself. But honestly, you tell me, which would have had more impact? A Globe and Mail headline that everyone was going to be picking up on the morning of, or the Prime Minister standing up in the House of Commons basically saying that a foreign government, we believe a foreign government, was involved in the murder of a Canadian citizen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you heard me yesterday. I've been doing this for a long time, and I was still kind of gobsmacked by the whole thing, because this may well be, I mean, one of the most dramatic statements any Canadian Prime Minister has made in the Commons, and certainly the shockwaves are still being felt today.
I just, I asked that because, yes, you're right. There's clearly, I guess there's no comparison, right? Doing that, standing in the middle of the House of Commons and doing that, and of course having everybody basically on his side, because you can't sort of take another side in this story. But then I wonder, had he waited, right, and we go back to what happened, this would have given every, of course, opposition member a chance to say, how are we finding out about this now through a story in the Globe and Mail, and not from what the government knows? So there you go, I guess. That's the answer.
But the other thing is, the question that you pose tacitly in that entire assessment is, who's keeping the PMO up to date on what's happening in the Globe newsroom?
Oh, there is that, yeah. That's a good point.
What's happening in India? So we expelled a top diplomat here. Have they responded as far as we know? I know that they're denying.
Yeah, they tossed one of our diplomats out.
Okay.
And they've discussed, I believe the word ludicrous was used by the Indian government to describe this allegation. As we just heard on the news of Jason Trudeau, he says you should take this seriously. The comment I find most interesting is coming from the U.S., saying that this is a very serious matter, refusing to say whether any intel they had gathered was used as a basis for Trudeau's announcement yesterday. But man, oh man, much in the same way as I don't think the Trudeau government really was aware from day to day what the next bombshell or ceiling tile would be in the whole sort of Chinese government interference story was. Now it looks like the opposition is not entirely sure what to say, because they don't know how much the Prime Minister has in some brown folder somewhere, and whether he has any more ammunition to drop between now and the weekend.
You got to wonder, too, and I don't mean to bring this up as an aside because it shouldn't be, but India, one of the most populous nations on earth, maybe they're the most populous now, big trading partner for Canada. I mean, there are lots of financial issues here as well, big trading partners, I said. So I think the Prime Minister, beyond getting up and saying or alleging that this happened, has got to be kind of careful about what he continues to say.
You know what? There's a part of me, though, and maybe, to sort of paraphrase you, Aaron, maybe I'm being a little naive here. I think perhaps Justin Trudeau or one of his proxies sat down and had a long conversation with other nations whose intelligence may have played a role in this announcement, and said, listen, how much can we say and what can we do? And do you have our back if push comes to shove? India is our 10th most important trading partner. But also, don't forget, India right now, is always taking pride in being a non-aligned nation, being the master of its own destiny. But indeed, there are people who are sort of looking at India sideways right now because of its relationship with Russia, or the fact that it has a relationship with Russia. There's a lot at stake, and you're quite right, but certainly in terms of Pacific politics right now, maybe, the coin flips the other way as well. Maybe India is asking itself, well, if this, keeps going on and more headlines keep coming out, how is our reputation overseas going to be affected by this? Because this is not the first time the Indian government has been accused of extrajudicial murder, and they have denied it. There's never been any hard proof. But up until yesterday, we didn't have any heads of government saying this publicly either. So I think there's been a real change in the sort of the key of this particular melody. And as I say, I don't think the opposition knows what's coming next. I don't think the Indian government knows what's going to be coming next. And I still think that this announcement yesterday was the result of more than just the work or digging of the Canadian government.
Well, we shall see. This story obviously not going away anytime soon. Jim, thank you. Appreciate it.
Adam.